With the first official F1 preseason test due to start this week, I thought I would take this opportunity to run through my predictions for the 2026 F1 season. So we'll start with the constructor standings, and in last place, 11th, I've gone for Cadillac. Now, I don't think that's a big surprise. I think most people, if not all people, will have Cadillac because, of course, it is their first year as a team. And also, new regulations, I think, doesn't help them because they have nothing to copy. They have nothing to take inspiration from. They have to start from scratch. They haven't had a long time to prepare for this season. They only got their place on the grid approved about a year or so ago. I know that they were doing some work beforehand, but really, the proper work has only been going on for the last year. I think it's fairly obvious to me that, barring any kind of massive surprise, Cadillac will be 11th. Similarly, sort of a new team. In 10th, I've gone for Audi. Now, of course, they were Sauber last year and have owned Sauber for a few years now, but it's the first season that they've rebranded to Audi and they have a new engine. Audi making an F1 engine for the first time. And that's, of course, going to come with its difficulties. As we've seen in the shakedown a few times, they have stopped on track. Whether that's due to the engine or not, we don't know 100%. But I think the engine won't be the best on the grid by any stretch, and I think that although they'll probably be quite far clear of Cadillac relatively, I think they'll be closer to the back of the rest of the pack and being able to fight for points, and I think they will score points this season. But Audi, I'm going 10th. I think they'll be slightly unreliable, especially at the start of the season, and I'm not sure if the car will be that quick anyway compared to some of the rest that we've got coming up. And 9th, I've gone Racing Bulls. Now, this might be a little bit harsh on them, but I had to put someone down in 9th. And it's another team with a new engine, although the Red Bull powertrains Ford engine has two teams, of course, Racing Bulls and Red Bull. So they will be able to test more, get more data, and develop it more or optimize it more to perform better and more reliably. So I think that will help them as well. But they have sort of inexperienced lineup. Liam Lawson has never done a full season with Racing Bulls. His only full season in F1 came last year, and he obviously had that difficult start with Red Bull. And Arvid Lindblad, 18 years old, making his debut in Formula 1. I think Red Bull are very excited about him. They think he's got a lot of potential, but that doesn't mean he's going to hit the ground running necessarily, and expect perhaps some incidents, maybe crashes, and that will, of course, eat into the budget cap. So they may not be able to do as many upgrades as they would like if that keeps happening. So 9th, I've gone Racing Bulls. 8th, I've gone for Haas. Now, Haas, I think, have had a decent shakedown, and they're looking quite good. But, of course, they are the smallest team in F1. They have a smaller design team even than Cadillac, who are a new team. So if every team performs optimally based on the facilities they have, Haas would be last, although of course I don't think that's going to happen. They've got a great driver in Ollie Behrman there. I think he's really going to kick on from his first season. Maybe iron out a few mistakes because he's shown real great pace there. However, Esteban Ocon I think was a bit disappointing last year. I think Ayo Komatsu's also admitted that he's disappointed with Ocon's season. And I'm not sure if he will improve with it. We have to wait and see. But 8th, I've gone Haas. I think that'll be a solid season for them. 6th, and a big improvement on last year, is Alpine. I think Alpine, with their new Mercedes engine, with their focus on 2026 for most of last year, are in a good position to improve based upon last year. Franco Colapinto, with his first full F1 season, I think will improve. Again, he'll be hoping to iron out some of those mistakes and use some of that pace that we saw, especially in his Williams days in 2024. And we all know that Pierre Gasly is a great midfield driver, and I think could put in some great performances for them. And if the Mercedes engine is the best engine, as is rumoured, then that will put them in good stead. Although I think they'll be last of all the Mercedes cars and behind some other cars as well. So that's why I've gone Alpine in 7th. 6th, and maybe controversially, I don't know, I've gone for Aston Martin. Now, a lot of people are excited about Adrian Newey coming in, and they've seen that the new car looks a lot different to other cars and quite innovative, although that doesn't necessarily mean that it is a good car, a fast car. They're already playing down their performance and what it will be at the start of the season, especially. I think they could struggle at the start of the season. I know Adrian Newey's talked about them being 4 months behind other people on development. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But of course, they may well be behind, and they only got to the shakedown on the last 2 days. Along with having Stroll in one of the cars, who I think hasn't really improved the last few years. Maybe it's got even a bit worse. So I'm not sure he'll be the best driver to have if there's a car that can only be fast on certain days and in certain conditions, which may be the case for this. The car also reminds me a little bit of the McLaren from 2003 that Adrian Newey designed. That was really innovative, had loads of great ideas on it, but it just wasn't reliable, and they didn't actually end up running it because they kept the 2002 car that they'd updated for 2003, but the 2003 car was too unreliable in testing and they couldn't get it to work. And hopefully this won't be the same for Aston Martin in terms of an unreliable car that looks innovative and could be inspiring cars of the future. But for 6th place, I'm going for Aston Martin, maybe just pulled up a little bit by Alonso, maybe dropping in some great performances, putting the car high up the grid, and getting some good points for them in certain races under certain conditions that might suit the car better. 5th, I've gone for Williams. Now, I know that they didn't attend the first shakedown, and that looked like they were behind, and that's, of course, a big mistake from them, and that's not what they were planning, so it is something that they need to address in the future, but I think that might be because they have gone for quite a bold design, and maybe one that could pay off. I know they spent most of 2025 designing and working on the 2026 car, and that could mean that they are in a strong position for 2026. Now, they will need to have a good couple of tests in Bahrain before the first race, and maybe they won't be properly on the pace that they hope to be in Australia, but I think the car will be a good one. They'll have that Mercedes engine. I think James Vowles is a great team principal. They've got 2 great drivers, especially Carlos Sainz, I think, is a really great driver for them to have. And if their car is good enough and there's points available, I trust both the drivers to achieve that and pick up the points, and they will finish 5th in the Constructors' Championship. 4th, I have gone for Red Bull. Now, of course, they have a new engine and a new driver in Isaac Hadjar. Hadjar, I think, might struggle a little bit, but it probably is good for him to go into a new team with the new regulations, because the car may not be as focused on Max Verstappen or as undrivable for other drivers as the last set of cars seemed to be. That could help him, although of course he's still up against Max Verstappen, and I don't think he'll beat him. He may get close to him on occasion, but I think Max Verstappen will dominate most of the time, and using his skill will drag that car up the grid if it's not performing so well. I think they may be slightly unreliable perhaps, although they seem to be pretty positive about how the reliability of the new engine went in the shakedown. So Red Bull, although they have a new engine, I think they'll still finish 4th. They're still a good team. They're still a big team. They've still got probably the best driver on the grid. So 4th place in the Constructors' Championship will be Red Bull. 3rd and highest of the non-Mercedes engine cars, I've gone for Ferrari. Of course, there have been false storms in the past, 2022, the most recent one, and perhaps 2024 into 2025 was another one where people expected Ferrari to be challenging for the championship. I'm not getting dragged into that this time. I don't think they'll be challenging for the championship, although I think they could win races and get closer to the front than they did in 2025. Now, of course, they've got Charles Leclerc, who, other than Max Verstappen, is probably the only other driver to have a claim as best driver on the grid currently, maybe George Russell as well. But I think with him performing the way he did, especially in 2025 into 2026, could be good. And Lewis Hamilton, we all know that he's still a great driver, but he just couldn't quite get to grips with the 2025 car. But he's already been on record saying that the 2026 car feels more fun to drive, and hopefully for his sake it will be easier for him to drive as well. So I think with those two pushing the car forward, and Ferrari hopefully not making a terrible engine or a terrible car and doing better than they have done previously, I think they'll finish 3rd, and they're another one of those teams that spent a lot of last year focused on this year's car, so they'll be hopeful that that wasn't time that was wasted. Now, 2nd, I've gone for Mercedes. I think that, of course, they are the favourites coming into the season. They seem to have the best engine according to most people that you ask, and that's why top 2 teams in this Constructors' Championship prediction are both Mercedes engine cars. But I have gone for Mercedes second. I think although George Russell is a great driver, I'm not so sure about Kimi Antonelli. I think he will be in the future, but we'll wait to see how he'll do this year. I think he will improve, and I think he will win his first race this season. But will that consistency be there? I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. And overall, although Mercedes have had the best engine the last time the engine regulations changed, the last time the aerodynamic regulations changed, they got it wrong, and they haven't recovered from that. So I'm not sure that just because the regulations have changed again, that means that Mercedes will definitely have the best car, which is why I've put them second. And first, I've gone for McLaren. They will also have that Mercedes engine. However, they designed the best car for the last 2 years, and I don't see any reason why that would change into 2026. They've got two great drivers, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, although I think these cars may suit Norris more than they do Oscar Piastri, just based off some early rumours that have been coming out and how the drivers have been talking about how the cars handle. Having said that, that doesn't mean Piastri won't learn. He took a big step between his second season and his third season. If he can take as big a step between his third and his fourth season coming into 2026, then he will be right there with Norris and probably beating him, as he was for most of last season before he, of course, fell away and Norris won that championship. So I think it's going to be the third Constructors' Championship in a row for McLaren, powered by that Mercedes engine and with their incredible aerodynamics that they've had for the last few years. In my Drivers' Championship predictions, I've gone for Sergio Perez in 22nd, Valtteri Bottas in 21st, Nico Hulkenberg in 20th, Arvid Lindblad 19th, Gabriel Bortoleto 18th, Esteban Ocon 17th, and Liam Lawson 16th. I think it's fairly obvious what I've already said about Cadillac is that I don't think they'll have a car that can really fight with anyone else. So it was really a toss-up between Perez and Bottas, but I've gone for Bottas just because I think he's probably a little bit quicker for me. So I think he might be able to just about pick up a better result than Perez, but there's really not a lot in it, and it could easily be the other way around. 20th, I've gone for Hulkenberg. I think at points last season he was being beaten by Bortoleto fairly often, and I think that's probably going to continue, and the Audi I don't think will be particularly good, so that's why Hulkenberg is 20th. 19th, Lindblad. I think he will show speed, but I think maybe just a few too many errors and inexperience will mean that he won't get as many points as he probably deserves. And 18th, Bortoleto. I think he's a good driver. I think he's going to improve for this season, but the Audi just won't be good enough for him to make a real difference in his championship position. Ocon 17th. I wasn't impressed with him last year, to be honest, very often, and I think that's going to continue this year. So 17th for Esteban Ocon in what I think will probably be his last year for Haas. Liam Lawson in 16th. I've gone for that because I think he is a decent driver, better than he's probably shown in some of his outings in an F1 car, especially last year. I think he'll improve and show a bit more consistency this year, but I don't think the car will be too great for him, and that'll be the best that he can do. 16th. 15th, I've got Lance Stroll. 14th, I've got Ollie Behrman. 13th, I've got Franco Colapinto. 12th, I have Pierre Gasly. And 11th, I have Fernando Alonso. Now, Stroll is in 15th because I don't think he's as good as Alonso, obviously. I don't think anybody does, and I don't think he's going to improve this season. The Aston Martin will be good at some tracks, I think, and under some conditions, but I don't think he'll make the most of it. He'll probably be a few places behind Alonso, but I think the car will just be enough to get him ahead of some of those drivers below him in my prediction. Ollie Behrman 14th, I think he's going to have a really good season. In the Haas, I think he could have one or two standout results, but I don't think the car will be there for the whole season to allow him to be any better in the championship, although I think we will definitely see his quality again this year. 13th, Franco Colapinto. I was really impressed with what I saw with him when he came into Williams in 2024, and hopefully for his sake, with a good pre-season, the first time he's ever had a pre-season with a team, and a new car that they spent a lot of time designing with a new Mercedes engine, which should be the best on the grid. I think Colapinto is set up to have a good season and really show why he deserves a place in Formula 1. And his teammate, just one position ahead. I think Gasly is a great midfield driver, as I've always said. And I think he'll get a few more points than Colapinto, quite a few more points perhaps, but they'll only be separated by one position in the championship. I still think he's going to be better than Colapinto this year. And maybe again, he might be one of the ones that has a standout result if things go his way in a race or two. And 11th for Fernando Alonso. I think he might be one who can sneak a few podiums with Aston Martin when maybe they get on top of the car further on in the season, or if there's conditions that suit the Aston Martin better than others. and we all know what he can do. I'm not sure he's as consistent as he used to be, but he's still a great driver, and on his day can battle with the best of the drivers at the front of the field. In 10th place, I have Isaac Hadjar. 9th, I have Alex Albon. 8th, I have Carlos Sainz. And 7th, I have Max Verstappen. Now, Isaac Hadjar, I think he's going to be better than Lawson and Tsunoda were last year at Red Bull. I think he'll be closer to Max Verstappen, a combination of maybe having a bit more confidence going in, and also the new car perhaps being easier to drive. I think that will help him. But of course, he's no Max Verstappen, and I don't think the car will be as good as it was last year. I don't think it'll be winning races often. Maybe 1 or 2 in the hands of Verstappen, but not with Hadjar. But I think he'll get 1 or 2 podiums and do decently well enough to keep his seat for 2027. I've gone Alex Albon in 9th because I think it's really a toss-up between the 2 Williams drivers. But I think the second half of last year, Carlos Sainz showed that he's just slightly a level above Alex Albon. But I think they'll both have a great season and really capitalise on when Williams are in a good position, in the conditions, when they've got an opportunity. Those are the drivers that you want in that position because they can take it, as we saw with Sainz with his 2 podiums last year. And I think they'll both get podiums this year for Williams. 7th, I've got Max Verstappen. Now, depending on how competitive this year is, I think he still could win a race. But I don't think that consistently the car's going to be as reliable and fast as he needs it to be to mount any kind of title challenge or to go further up the field. But I think there'll be really a top 7 that starts to pull away from the rest of the field in terms of the championship standings. And he'll be just at the back of that, hanging on in the Red Bull car. But I don't think that he'll be able to do any more with that car. 6th, I've gone Lewis Hamilton. 5th, I've gone Kimi Antonelli. 4th, I've gone for Charles Leclerc. And 3rd, I've gone for Oscar Piastri. Now, I've gone Lewis Hamilton 6th. I think he'll be closer to Charles Leclerc and beating him more often in this 2026 car. But I'm not sure if he's got the consistency to do it over a full season like he used to be able to. I think he can pick up podiums, his first podium in a Grand Prix for Ferrari this year, and maybe a win if the car is good enough and close enough to the rest of the cars at the front. Then maybe he will get a win, but I don't think he'll be just quite as good as Charles Leclerc. I've gone for Antonelli in 5th because I think he might just be a little bit inconsistent still, maybe a few mistakes compared to his teammate George Russell, but I think we will see him out-qualifying Russell more often and out-racing him on occasion as well, but just not quite enough for a proper championship challenge just yet. For Charles Leclerc, I think he's going to have a great season again. Arguably was one of the best drivers on the grid last year. I think he'll do the same again, maximising that Ferrari whenever he can, along with Lewis Hamilton backing him up this time. I think a bit more in Grand Prix will help him as well, but I don't think the Ferrari will allow him to challenge for the championship this season. And Oscar Piastri 3rd, I've already mentioned that I don't think the cars will suit him quite as well as last year they did, because there'll be a bit more sliding and less grip, and that's really where he struggled towards the end of last year on the low grip tracks. So I think he will be in the championship hunt for a little bit, but just not long enough to take it to the last few races of the season, and will fall off and finish 3rd in the championship. So here we are, the top 2 in the Formula 1 World Drivers' Championship for 2026, as I predict. And 2nd, I've gone George Russell. I think he's going to have a great season. I think the Mercedes would be just slightly slower than the McLaren this year, so I can't put him in the first position in the championship, even though I think he probably deserves it, and perhaps will even make another step in his driving this season, as we saw him do from 2024 to 25. And you could say he will be the best driver on the grid this season, and I think he will be really up there, but I don't think he'll quite have the car to challenge for the championship. And also, he doesn't have the experience of challenging for a championship, so maybe that will make him slightly less able to challenge compared to who I've got in first position, which is Lando Norris. I think he was very impressive in the last few races of last year, keep his composure and come back from that engine failure at Zandvoort. I think he's going to carry on that momentum with the quickest car on the grid and take another championship. I think he might win it on the penultimate round of the season. I don't think it's going to go to the last race of the season this time. And I think he's going to improve on his performance from last year. Again, maybe take another step up and maybe go back to the sort of 2024 dominance that he had over Oscar Piastri compared to how they were a bit closer in 2025. But let me know what you think. You probably disagree with me. And I'd love to hear what you actually think compared to me, and where you agree and where you disagree. So let me know about that, and I'm sure I will be reacting to this at the end of the season with a lot of those predictions being wrong, but you can't get them all right.